Social Security benefits have lost 20% of their buying power since 2010. That is not a political talking point. That is what the math looks like. And then, there is the part that gets talked about even less than the dollar figures. Walk into any large retail store in America and look at who is behind the register. Gray-haired cashiers. People in their late 60s stocking shelves. Men and women in their early 70s, standing in jobs that were supposed to be 15 years behind them. For most of those people, it is not an inspiring story about staying active. It is pure arithmetic. The savings ran out faster than expected. So, they went back. And underneath all of that financial pressure, something else that gets almost no attention. Loneliness. The neighborhood. The community. The close friends who knew you for 30 years. The family, who used to live near enough to drop by on a Wednesday afternoon. That entire structure has quietly eroded for a lot of people. Children moved to different states. Old friends passed away, or gradually lost touch. Financial pressure and social disconnection. Both landing at exactly the same moment in life. When people need stability and belonging most. That combination is where the question begins quietly. Almost like something you're afraid to say out loud. If I can't afford to grow old here, what if I just didn't? Part 2. What the videos are showing you. The internet has a very convincing answer ready. Mexico. Portugal. Thailand. Vietnam. Let's look at what the numbers actually are in these places. In Mexico, cities like Puerto Vallarta or Merida. A 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood rents for roughly $600 to $1,000 a month. A full meal at a local restaurant runs $2 to $5. The time zones often overlap entirely with wherever your family is back in the States. For a lot of Americans living on Social Security, Mexico doesn't feel like a foreign country. It feels like the American Southwest. Except the money actually goes somewhere meaningful. Thailand offers different math entirely. In Chiang Mai, a modern furnished apartment costs under $500 a month. A visit to a quality private hospital runs $15 to $30 for the appointment itself. People who spent years quietly dreading the moment they opened a medical bill describe walking out of a Thai hospital with a feeling they had almost forgotten. Relief. Pure uncomplicated relief. Portugal attracts a different kind of person. It is not as cheap as Southeast Asia. And most people who go there will tell you. Price is honestly not the main reason they chose it. What Portugal offers is ease. Safe streets. Reliable systems. A pace of daily life that doesn't feel like giving something up. It feels like getting something back that you didn't realize you had lost. And then, there is Japan. Japan is the name that surprises almost everyone when it comes up. It is not cheap. The language difference is real. The cultural expectations can be demanding. And yet, Japan has one of the highest concentrations of Americans receiving Social Security abroad. Sit with that for a moment. Because it tells you something important. This trend is not simply about finding affordable rent. For a growing segment of people, what they are actually looking for is not cheap. It is functional. Trains that run on time. Streets that stay clean. A society built around mutual consideration, rather than constant low-level friction. For people who have grown quietly, exhausted by the feeling that basic things no longer work reliably back home, Japan offers something genuinely hard to put a dollar value on. The relief of living inside a system that simply works. These countries are not competing on price alone. They are competing on quality of daily life. And right now, for a specific generation of older Americans, the United States is losing that competition. Part 3. What the videos don't show you. Now, here is the part that never makes it into those videos. Picture a retired school administrator. 35 years in education. Careful with money her whole working life. She moves to Portugal at 68. For the first 3 years. It is genuinely everything she hoped for. She walks more than she has in a decade. The financial pressure she carried for years in the back of her mind just lifts. She sits in outdoor cafes. Has coffee for €1. Feels, for the first time in a very long time, like she is not constantly running from something. Then, the 4th year arrives. Her closest friend back home is diagnosed with a serious illness. Getting back to see her means months of advanced planning. The physical toll of a transatlantic flight on a body in its late 60s. Landing somewhere that already feels slightly less familiar than it used to. Her grandchild takes her first steps. She watches it happen on a phone screen. In a quiet apartment. 4,000 miles away. She is not miserable. Life abroad is still, by many measures, good. But she starts to feel something she doesn't have a clean word for. Not sadness exactly. More like the slow realization that she belongs fully to neither the place she is living in, nor the place she came from. She is somewhere in between. And that in between has no address. This is not her story alone. It comes up constantly in expat communities. Usually shared quietly. A little cautiously. Like admitting something you didn't intend to. You leave for a few years. And when you look back, the connective tissue is gone. The people you knew have moved on. Or passed away. Or simply kept living while you were somewhere else. The neighborhood didn't wait for you. The city didn't preserve itself while you were gone. And at some point, a lot of people realize they have been carefully building something new somewhere else. While quietly assuming, without ever quite saying it, that the old life was still there waiting. It is only when they actually turn around to look that they realize it is not. That is the part nobody warned them about. Part 4. The consequences most people discover too late. That psychological weight is real. But it is not the only layer that catches people off guard. Because underneath the emotional complexity of expat life, there is an almost entirely practical dimension that lands on people, like a wall they simply didn't see coming. Consequence 1. The tax system follows you. Most Americans assume that when they leave the country, they leave the American tax system behind. That assumption is wrong. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that taxes its citizens based on citizenship, not where they actually live. That means it doesn't matter where you are, how long you've been gone, or whether you ever intend to come back. As long as you carry an American passport, you are required to file a federal tax return every single year. Even if you owe nothing. Even if your entire income was earned in another country. The filing requirement follows you. And beyond the annual return. If a foreign bank account holds more than $10,000 at any point during the year, a separate report called an FBR must be filed with the Treasury Department. Miss that filing even unknowingly, and the penalties can be severe. This is not a loophole. It is not an obscure rule. It is the law as it exists today in 2026. Consequence 2. Your bank may not welcome the move. Here is the part that genuinely stops people cold when they first hear it. Foreign banks frequently do not want American customers at all. Because of the compliance burdens that American financial regulations place on any foreign institution holding U.S. citizen accounts. Many banks in the most popular expat destinations have simply decided it is not worth the administrative cost. People have arrived in their chosen country, signed a lease, unpacked their things, and then discovered that opening a basic checking account is considerably harder than they expected. And back home, some American institutions are not particularly welcoming to clients who leave either. There are documented cases of bank accounts being closed, sometimes with minimal notice, after a mailing address was changed to a foreign country. Certain brokerage firms do not allow people with non-American addresses to hold retirement accounts. The financial system a person spent 40 years contributing to can, in specific circumstances, quietly start closing its doors the moment they step out. Most people navigate all of this eventually. But the gap between the easy, sun-drenched picture in those YouTube videos and the actual on-the-ground administrative reality is significant. Many people who thought they were choosing simplicity find themselves managing a new and different kind of complexity instead, just with better weather. Consequence 3, Medicare stops at the border. This is the one that keeps people awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. Medicare, the coverage you spent your entire working life paying into, does not leave the country with you. In most situations, Medicare won't pay for healthcare or supplies you get outside the United States. Not reduced coverage. Not partial coverage. Essentially none. The moment you establish your primary residence abroad, you step outside a safety net that followed you everywhere inside America for years. In places like Thailand and Mexico, private healthcare is affordable and often genuinely excellent. Many Americans living abroad actually pay less for medical care than they did back home. But, private international health insurance for a 70-year-old with pre-existing conditions is not inexpensive. And the coverage always has limits that matter. And cost is only part of the equation. Think about being 74 years old. In a hospital. In the middle of the night. In a country where the primary language is not the one you think in. Trying to explain your symptoms, your history, your allergies, through broken phrases, hand gestures, and a translation app that keeps misreading what you type. The care might be good. The experience can still be frightening. In a way that is almost impossible to prepare for in advance. Sitting comfortably at home, watching someone else's video about it, there is a quiet, particular vulnerability in growing old somewhere unfamiliar. Most people only fully understand that distinction after they are already living inside it, not before. Consequence 4, long-term stays require more than a passport. Visiting is one thing. Living is another. Most countries that draw American retirees require proof of steady retirement income, minimum bank balances, proof of health insurance, a criminal record check, and in some cases an FBI background check. Some visas require renewal every few years. Some restrict property ownership for foreigners. And if local laws shift, American retirees can suddenly face new requirements. Shorter visa terms, or restrictions that didn't exist when they arrived. The countries that are most welcoming today are not legally required to stay that way. Part 5, Why most people still stay. So here is the question that doesn't go away. Knowing all of it. The taxes. The banking friction. The Medicare gap. The distance from family. The slow psychological drift away from home. Why do so many people still want to leave? And why do most people ultimately stay? The answer is sitting right inside two numbers. 44% of Americans have been seriously considering retiring abroad. Fewer than 700,000 are actually doing it right now. That is less than 1% of all Social Security recipients. The dream is enormous. The execution is rare. And that gap is not confusion. It is the full weight of reality landing on a real person. With a real life. Real relationships. And a real history somewhere. Because here is something that doesn't get said enough. Nobody actually retires in a country. They retire in a system. One they spent decades quietly learning without realizing they were learning it. They know which pharmacy stays open late on weeknights. They know who to call when the furnace breaks in January. They know how to navigate a medical appointment. What questions to ask. What forms to fill out. How the insurance call is going to go. That entire invisible web of small, practical knowledge is something you never think about until the moment it is gone. Move abroad. And you give up all of it at once. Rebuilding it in a new language inside an unfamiliar system. In a place where you know almost nobody. Is a specific kind of exhaustion that is very hard to appreciate until you are inside it. So most people run the numbers. They look at the gap between income and expenses. They feel the real weight of what uprooting everything would actually require at this point in their lives. And they stay. Not because staying is comfortable, but because at least they know exactly what kind of difficult they are already dealing with. And then there is the consideration that ends more of these conversations than anything else. Family. An international retirement sounds perfectly reasonable. Right up until the moment you sit with the specific image of being on the wrong side of an ocean when something goes wrong with someone you love. What used to be a 40-minute drive becomes a last-minute transatlantic flight. At full price, booked in a panic. On a body that is already tired. For a lot of people, that one image is enough. The conversation ends there. Finally, the honest answer. Here is the honest answer to the question this video is really asking. Is leaving America a form of freedom? Or is it something else? For some people, leaving genuinely is liberating. They find a quality of life they could not have imagined while still caught inside the familiar grind. Real community. Financial ease. A daily pace that feels like something designed for actual human beings. For them, this is not settling for something lesser. It is genuinely better. For others, it is more honest and more complicated than that. It is a practical solution to a structural failure made under real pressure. With real losses built in, that don't show up in a cost of living comparison. Distance from the people they love. Administrative complexity they were not warned about. Healthcare uncertainty that sits in the back of the mind. A homeland that gradually, slowly, stops feeling like one. They make the trade because the alternative, staying, running slowly out of money in a place that has also run out of the community and belonging they once had, is simply worse. But it is still a trade. Not a windfall. And for the majority, those 44% who think seriously about leaving and then quietly stay, the decision doesn't happen in a moment of courage. It happens in a moment of clear-eyed recognition. That the familiar difficulty is the one they know how to carry. That the grandchildren deserve to be seen in person rather than on a screen. That becoming a stranger in a new place at 72, with a Medicare card that stops working at the border, is simply more weight than they are willing to take on. So, they stay. And they adjust. And they make the small cuts that quietly accumulate year by year into a retirement that looks nothing at all like the one they planned. And exactly like the one they could actually afford to have. This whole story, when you really sit with it, is about a promise. For generations, working Americans were told something straightforward. Contribute. Save. Do the right things. And the country will hold a secure place for you when you get old. Not wealthy. Not luxurious. Just secure. Dignified. Real. The people moving to Mexico and Thailand and Portugal are not making an ideological point. They are doing what people have always done when the place they live stops meeting their most basic needs. They are simply looking for somewhere that will. If this gave you a clearer picture of what retiring abroad actually involves, share it with someone who is running the same calculation right now. Because the things we overlook have a way of becoming the things we eventually cannot ignore. Drop your honest answer in the comments. Would you consider it? And if you already have, what did nobody warn you about? Now, if you are seriously running these numbers, there is one more thing you need to understand before you make any move. Most people who retire abroad assume that once they leave, the American tax system is behind them. It is not. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that taxes based on citizenship, not where you live. And there is a specific federal filing requirement that applies to anyone with a foreign bank account holding more than $10,000 at any point during the year. Most people have never heard of it. The penalties for missing it, even accidentally, even when the money is completely legal, can be devastating. In the next video, I am going to walk you through exactly what that requirement is, who it applies to, how it works, and the one filing that protects you completely. If you are thinking about retiring abroad, or you already have, that video could be the most important one you watch this year. We will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching our videos.